Chapter 1. Calm Days and Storm Clouds. Part 2 of 4. Alexia had been working with Conrad in refining her divination array after being given the life sign data from the other two Mayans who were captured at the Oppenheim. The twins were with Loki and Crimson as the two Earthmares took them on a walk through the woods. Conrad's part in the running experiments was to wear a harness that had 20 different crystals on it to simulate the data so he would appear as a Mayan to Alexia's array. He had gotten the idea after watching reruns of Star Trek with Crimson, and Alexia jumped on it to make him her test subject. They were about to run the fifth trial when the tome indicated that Twilight Sparkle had returned from her prolonged archaeology expedition. Both Earthlings dropped what they were doing to activate their side of the tome. The Lavender Princess's avatar appeared moments later. "Alex, Conrad. It's been far too long." Toon was glad to see her mentor again. "It has, Sensei. Was your trip fruitful?" Twilight rubbed the back of her neck in a sheepish expression. "I got way more than I bargained for, but it was highly productive. I managed to secure Commander Hurricane's journal from a sealed-off archive in the frozen wastes. It gave first hoof account of the Pegasi's last emperor before they and the other two tribes unified into a single banner." "Sounds like it was worth it then," Conrad commented with a trace of a congratulatory smile. Sparkle was very satisfied with herself. "Very much so. I'm already planning to start rectifying historical inaccuracies with the journal. Hurricane sounds like a very honest pony, and wasn't afraid to put unflattering things about himself in there for the sake of the truth." She waved a hoof at the air to push the topic away. "But enough about that. How have you been doing?" She fully inspected Toon. "Sorry I missed the twins' birthday." Alexia pulled Conrad in for a sidelong hug. "It's fine. Hopefully those two furballs will have plenty more birthdays to come." The Lavender Mare smiled at that. "I bet they will. So how's Trinity coming along? Last I heard you were just getting it started up." Conrad held up a restraining wing. "We'd love to tell you all about it, but I've been wondering about something Discord warned us about recently." Twilight's smile vanished. "He didn't full nap you again, did he?" She directed the question to Alexia. "No. He came here in the form of smoke. But Connie's right. I was kind of concerned about what he said." She was far more than a little worried, but she didn't want to make her mentor overreact. "He gave me a warning about two things, the lunacy phenomena, and an immortal's pain." Twilight's frown soured into sadness as her face went cold. "I see he's not willing to wait then." "Wait for what?" inquired the fellow alicorn. Twilight sat on her haunches and took a slow breath to calm herself. "Alex. You should know that we alicorns don't decay with time." The stallion was confused by that. "What do you mean don't decay?" Sparkle feared what her student's reaction would be. "It has to be done. We alicorns do not measure our lives in years or decades. In fact, we do not measure them at all because age is meaningless to us. So long as no calamity befalls you, Alexia, you will never die." Toon paled. "Why, you mean I'm immortal?" Twilight regained more of her composure. "No. You can die. But it takes a lot to do so, more so than an average pony. And as you get older, it will be increasingly difficult for you to die as your power will only increase over time." She hated talking about death, but the question needed a thorough answer. "But no matter your age, you will never be truly immortal." The room's attention shifted to the silver alicorn who let go of her mate and stumbled to sit on her rump. "Why, you mean everyone I love?" Twilight remembered Celestia's own talk regarding this subject and assumed a stern visage. "Don't start worrying about mortality, Alex. Don't dwell on what you will lose. Plan for the future, but live in the present." Her mentor's words sparked a memory of what Loki said weeks earlier. "Don't fret over eventually losing something, live in the moment and enjoy what you've got while you've got it," Toon quoted so low it was almost inaudible. The memory of Loki's infectious laughter chipped away at the short-lived despair. Conrad tilted the silver mare's head up with a hoof, giving her a chiding smile. Don't be weeping over my grave before I'm in it, okay? Her downcast ears perked back up as he planted a kiss on her, burning away the fear that Loki's words left behind. Alexia let him take command of the embrace and he seized it without hesitation. Twilight blushed at the affectionate display, silently chiding herself for not finding a herd of her own. Eventually, Conrad broke contact and hugged Alexia tightly. He felt honor-bound to protect his alpha from every serious threat, but he knew enough not to coddle her. Now was one of those times. Sparkle gasped slightly when she saw his sword and shield cutie mark glowing slightly. The stallion folded his wings around his mate. Alex! Don't even start thinking about outliving us. You do that and it'll drive you mad. He made sure to impart as much love as possible in his words. Loki's insane. Criminally most of the time, but she's right. Live in the present, not the future. Toon returned the embrace, relishing in his strength and nuzzled him. I think I can do that. Her fears were placated for the moment and she slowly let go of him only to catch sight of Twilight and grinned sheepishly. Sorry about that. Sparkle was glad that Conrad had been present to keep Alexia calm. Think nothing of it. As much as he hated to drag the conversation back down, Conrad felt it was necessary to ask about the other topic. Can you tell us about lunacy? I'm guessing it has to do with going crazy. Both alicorns sobered, with the purple one nodded. An odd similarity in both of our native tongues, but yes it does. As you may have already been aware of, Alex, your mana flare was a precursor to your awakening as an alicorn. Since you've repaired the damage it left behind, how does your level of mana feel compared to your time as a unicorn? Almost inexhaustible. I've cut back all meat in my diet and I still feel like I'm sitting on a time bomb here. Twilight understood the feeling all too well. So long as you keep your mana discipline up, you'll be perfectly stable. But as time goes on, your mana will only induce further changes. The lavender mare turned to the side and pulled her mane up and to the side with a hoof. The earthlings didn't know what they were looking for at first, but Conrad noticed a few points of light in the purple princess's mane that seemed to sparkle like stars. They were small, and were only perceivable because Twilight was trying to show them. Eventually, your mana will begin maturing and changing your fur and hair. That's unsettling, Alexia began carefully, but what does that have to do with lunacy? Twilight let her mane and leg fall back to their normal positions. Lunacy is only the most recent name for a condition that can afflict any alicorn who is driven to the brink of insanity. Be it from despair, jealousy, or simple overzealousness, we are more deeply affected by madness than a normal pony. So much so that it has its own name, Nightmare. Her memories of the stark differences between Nightmare Moon and Luna caused a worm of fear to seed its way into Twilight, making her worry that she could suffer such a fate, as well as her student. An alicorn's magic becomes twisted as such feelings start to erode at you until you physically become a dark reflection of your normal self. Alexia's concern was blunted again by Loki's eerie predictions. So I would become Darth Alexia. Twilight was unfamiliar with the term, but Conrad made the same connection. I'm not exactly sure how you can protect yourself against something like that without cutting yourself off from the world or your emotions. Alexia's thoughts danced around the idea. It seemed abhorrent, but so did falling to nightmare. Is that how Celestia and Luna live? Sparkle became unreadable. They remain warm and cordial to every pony, but they form few lasting relationships. They most certainly do not cut themselves off from the world, however. Toon stood up to put some steel in her voice. Then I see no reason to do the same. You're sure the nightmare can only be triggered by my own emotions? No external forces? Sparkle shrugged in spite of herself. I have no idea. The history books don't go too deeply into what caused Luna's fall, and neither she nor Celestia wished to go too far into it. It's a painful subject. The silver mare could sympathize, but the topic at hand was still mostly focused on her. Well, unless they say it takes something else to trigger a fall, then I'm not going to dwell on it. She looked at Conrad for his freely given assurances before turning back to her mentor. Why think about eternity if I might not see tomorrow? Both other ponies caught on to her moderate flippancy. Conrad knew her well enough that she wanted to push it from her mind, while Twilight knew exactly how Toon felt. She needs time, and that's one thing she has plenty of. Asterisk. Alexia snapped to the present when the computer screen went black from lack of use. Despite her claim, the silver pony's thoughts always seemed to drift back to the idea of being ageless and succumbing to lunacy. Toon chased them away when she finally noticed the rest of the house had gone silent and checked the clock. 9:30, and we have work tomorrow. I've got a bit more time. She jiggled the mouse with her kinesis to wake the machine back up and started typing again. Of course, one can't really write about the Mayans without talking about those damnable clouds. We're still not exactly sure what came first. Either the Mayans were just normal people who were corrupted by the brown clouds that were covering the earth at random places, or the cult is perpetrating the clouds somehow. The random nature of how they drop to the surface, most of them by far end up in the sea, makes the brass think the Mayans might be a symptom of the clouds. Not the other way around. Either way, we know they're linked. As to what we can do about them, other than duck and cover, is just try to find the sources. Trinity was hit by a cloud just last week. We lost 5 Terrans to that, 3 humans and 2 Pegasi. They kept trying to divert the brown mist away or simply break it up, but those fogs are unnatural. Pegasi magic doesn't affect them at all. No matter how much the weather team tried, the brown fog would not be broken up or driven away. The ponies we lost were due to choking and falling out of the sky and crashing hard. The humans had been in one of the older buildings that didn't have an airtight room. By the time we found them, they were already awake and raving mad. It was difficult to handle. It was Trinity's first deaths. Inside our borders anyway. You would think after all the death the herd and I have dealt in the field I'd be sort of numbed by it. But it hurts just as hard the last time as it did the first. I asked Loki about it offhandedly, and she brought up an interesting point. As to whether it's true or not, I can't say. But she thinks it might be based in our herd mentality. Crimson's already suspected that's the reason none of us seems to get depressed for very long. Loki's theory is that we can never build an emotional barrier against harsh events because of how open we are to each other. Sure, I can logically accept death as a normal part of life and our job, but if this theory is correct, then we can never emotionally protect ourselves. Only recover from it quicker. At least so long as we're part of a herd, and I don't see that ending anytime soon. Crimson took a personal interest in this and has been studying equestrian text on this topic. But I haven't asked her about her progress as of late. Alexia stopped typing to think about her mates. She held the family picture up again. Each person in it tugged at her heartstrings and brought a smile to her lips, at least until Elizabeth's presence reminded the alicorn of her parents. They still won't talk to me. She huffed disdainfully. At least not after they ask me if I'm still in the herd. Doesn't matter that they've barely ever heard my feminine voice, they can tell when I try and lie. I wonder if I'll gain that parental lie detector ability with Sky and Spark, she thought absently. Maybe with Dusty too. Toon didn't want to think about her parents anymore as they left a bitter taste in her mouth, and regarded her journal. She contemplated saving it or not with the mouse hovering over the save button. Better give it top-level encryption. After doing just that, she shut the computer down. Alexia corked the bottle and downed the last of her glass before walking off to the kitchen, a slight buzz helping to alleviate her various worries. After dealing with the dishes and evening hygienics, she went back up to the master bedroom to find a sight that always burned away any fear or apprehension, her family. Between work and the 3 foals, the late hour had driven them to exhaustion. The 3 adults formed an incomplete box around the infants with the position at the head of the bed being left open for Alexia. Sky and Spark were nestled between Loki and their father, while the grey colt was curled up next to his mother. Toon was especially happy with how Loki treated the foals, doting on them as if they were her own. It came as no real surprise to the alicorn that all three children would end up seeing the other two mares as mothers as well, given how much they all cared for one another. The silver alicorn eased her way onto the bed and used her magic to pluck Aurora from her resting place. The little alabaster Pegasus had been washed and fed, but her father had passed out before he could preen her wings. She held the foal close to her face so she could whisper. "Did he fall asleep on the job again?" she asked playfully. Aurora only mumbled in tired incoherent gibberish while fluttering her wings. "He did? For shame." Preening was one of the few activities Toon did by mouth instead of magic. It was something she could never quite explain why it was a personal preference to do it the hard way. Alexia wrapped the filly in a large wing and gently preened the little Pegasus with only a mild horn light spell to see with. With tender care, she pulled the wing open with her magic and gently bit on the awry feathers and moved them back into their proper place. She repeated this action 5 more times on the underside of Aurora's wing. She smiled at seeing the look of utter contentment on her daughter's face. "I never knew how amazing it felt for him when I used to help Conrad preen. But after he returned the favor for the first time." She paused and smirked at how worn out they were after that night. "We ended up having to preen again." Alexia found a very different form of satisfaction at helping her daughter preen. After finishing the filly's wing, Toon had a motherly smile from the act of successfully straightening Sky's feathers, which was only reaffirmed after seeing the right wing was a pristine and smooth white. "I never expected the act of grooming another would feel so fulfilling." She chuckled as Aurora cooed in her sleep. The foal burrowed into her mother's silver wings, musing up Alexia's feathers. Toon's heart melted over the adorable little filly and silently preened the other wing. With her work complete, the silver mare let the filly sleep on her mother's belly with a silver wing draped over Sky to keep her warm. "Good night, little one." ***. Midshipman Sanders was a little tense as he sat in front of the sonar console aboard the HMAS Xian. The Australian submarine was participating in joint war games with British and American naval forces in the southern Pacific. The activity was meant to test each nation's capabilities in the event of war. However, the war games had been delayed by 3 months so each nation could test their equine seamen to see if they could continue to effectively serve on ships that were unfriendly to hooves. The Xian lacked any pony crewmen and was on an active hunt for the British submarine. A fellow Australian destroyer caught wind of it but lost track of its prey 10 minutes ago. Acting Captain Roberts was eager to prove himself worthy of captaincy. He kept a pleasant, if stern hold on the crew. Yet it was his ambition that currently put a lot of strain on Sanders, who currently had Roberts breathing down his neck as the midshipman tried to locate the British vessel. "Anything yet?" "No sir," Sanders whispered back. The Xian was operating on silent running and was trying to catch the British in case they tried to make a break to the north. With the vessel so quiet that the sonar operator could hear a pin drop in a ship over a kilometer away, Sanders waited and listened for over 3 hours as the Xian silently crept around in a search pattern at close to 1,000 feet below the waves. That was when the midshipman heard the most peculiar noise. Sanders' sudden shift in position made Roberts walk back over to his side. He knew his presence was known, and that Sanders would speak when he could. "I'm not sure what it is, but there's definitely something coming our way." "Is it the Brits?" Sanders pressed the headset into his ear. "Not a chance. It's very faint, but it sounds like a heavy metal wheel or semi-hollow sphere is rolling across the ocean floor." That threw the skipper for a loop. The ocean floor? It was a rhetorical question as he trusted the sonar operator to know what he was doing. "Think it might be a new kind of decoy? Something the Yanks are field testing." Roberts was becoming a little put off by the signal return. "They're crazy enough to do a lot of things, skipper, but I don't think they'd waste money to what amounts to a loud ball on the floor. Whatever it is, it's big, way too big to be a deployable decoy." The captain's curiosity was piqued. "Where is it going?" "The object is at grid 17.69, bearing 7 degrees north-northwest at 7 knots. It's going to pass within 100 meters of the X-axis." Roberts mulled over the information. I think Sanders is right. This is a little odd for it to be a decoy. Perhaps it's some new weapon the war games are supposed to be testing. If the latter is true, then that would explain why no one was told about it during the briefings. This could guarantee my promotion if I'm able to tail it and knock it out of the game. He made his way to the helm officer. Match are heading to keep up with the object, but don't spook it. Let's see if it's just here for surveillance, or if it's a weapon system. Aye aye sir. Sanders made his way back to the captain's chair and typed in his findings and actions into the main computer for later review by the military brass. Asterisk. The giant sphere designated as XJ-29 moved along the ocean floor, crushing or rolling over anything in its path. It cared for nothing save fulfilling its directive. Relocation protocol, terminated. Initiating disbursement directive. As it had been doing for the past 2 years, it sucked in massive amounts of water and converted all of the biological impurities into building blocks for the Mayan plague. Yet unlike every time before, someone was listening. Asterisk. The Xian drifted to a halt just under a kilometer to the south and 3.5 kilometers above. Roberts had to keep himself from pacing so he wouldn't create any excess noise. So, it stopped right outside of the war zone. I doubt the Yanks or Brits would violate the row just to better hide their toy. At least not if they were going to have it participate in the games. Skipper, what do you make of this? Sanders asked as he handed the headset over his shoulder. The captain took it and listened in. What played out of the speakers was the sound of what he could only guess to be machinery, but unlike any he had ever heard before. In addition, the sound of rushing water and hydro pumps was also detectable. He stood there, listening to it, for several minutes trying to figure out how he should proceed. The skipper went over to his XO. Make sure all of this is being recorded. I don't want anything to be missed. Asterisk. End of part 2.